You know, tell me, what was racing like in the early days with Frank Martin and all these guys was in the game?
It was a lot less rules.
Yeah.
we used to have a lot more leeway with the things we wanted to do, and you didn't have to ask anybody permission to do things. Now it's a business. Now it's under the scrutiny of HISA and whatnot. I think Frank Martin would probably roll over in his grave right now, the way things are in racing. But it's a good thing. It was a different kind of life. We were. The minute Frank Martin came in the morning, we were under the whip until 7 o'clock at night. We worked all day in that barn. I don't know if you remember Frank Martin's barn, but it had locks on it and gates. When you got in, he didn't necessarily let you out. We were working icing horses all day, and it was old school horsemanship. We didn't have MagnaWave machines and magnetic blankets and all the things that they've developed over the last 20 years or so. We had horses, we put them in the ice tub, we put them in a big whirlpool. We did things that we just don't do anymore, They've replaced that with a little bit of a simpler technology now. But there was no technology. Everything we did, it was, guts and hard work and determination, and we worked all day. If we had a horse that had a bad ankle, we'd put him in the ice tub for 2 hours in the morning, and then we'd come back at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and till 4 o'clock in the afternoon, he'd go back in the ice tub again. So it was just world-class but old-school horsemanship. And there was some very good things about it too, Now technology has overtaken this business a little bit, and it's still a great business, but it's not like the old days. The old days was great. And up here at Saratoga, the old days were unbelievable. You'd have a guy come by with a truckload of clover, fresh clover that he just picked in a field, and he'd drop it off at the barn, and the horses got fresh clover. And you'd have a guy come by with corn, and we'd put the corn in a big barrel of hot water, and we'd all eat corn on the cob. And Saratoga was amazing. We had hand pumps for water. There was no electric anything. We had no electric lights in these stalls. We had to use little lanterns, battery lanterns in the morning, or you took your car and you pulled it right up to the stall and you left your headlights on to clean the stalls. And there was no hot water. Hot water was a big barrel with a fire under it, a propane fire under it, and it heated all day long, and you kept adding cold water to it. And cold water, if you wanted to fill a bucket of water for a horse, you stood there with the pump and you pumped until the water filled. It was old school all the way, and I loved it.
Talk about the horsemanship at that time.
Horsemanship was amazing. Frank Martin could look at a horse walking 90 feet away, and he'd say to me, "That horse's shoulder's bothering him." And I'll be damned if it wasn't. It was. And he would, horsemanship was different. The trainers lined the railings and watch their horses train, and they were able to look at a horse, and they knew what was wrong with them, and they were hands-on. They took every horse outside and touched them every day, and you just don't see that. A lot of that's disappeared. Like the guys who didn't come up under that don't know to do things like that. So the horsemanship has certainly taken a little bit of a turn for the worse, and I don't want to anger anybody by saying that, but there's a lot more people who are tech savvy and smarter maybe, but they don't know a horse inside and out like we did, because you had to learn. When I first came to the racetrack, I had to know how to trim a horse's foot. If a horse lost a shoe, Frank Martin would tell me to put it back on. We didn't wait for a blacksmith, and we had to be able to do a little bit of everything. And horsemen these days don't have to do that. It's been taken out of their hands, but it's old school horsemanship and old time horsemanship is kind of a lost art. There's a few of them around, but as we die, the new guys are different. It's a technology game now.
Who was your mentor?
Frank Martin.
Frank Martin.
I was Frank Martin's assistant. I worked for Laz Barrera, and one day I'm with Laz Barrera and the Harborview Farm horses, and we had, no end of stake horses in that barn. And Frank Martin is at the rail, and he says, "You come to my office after you get done." I'm like, "Oh shit, this guy's gonna kill me." Right? I don't know. I thought maybe I got too close to one of his horses or something. And when I went to his office that day, he says, "How much does that guy pay you?" And I was getting top dollar. I said, $500 a week. He said, "I give you $1,000 a week." And I gave Las Barrera a week's notice, and I went to work for Frank. And that was the end of it. And let me tell you something, he got that $1,000 out of me every week, because I got there at 4:30 in the morning, and I didn't leave till 7 o'clock at night, 7 days a week. But you know what? It was worth it. It was great.
You know, talk about some of the black guys that was under the Chevrolet back then.
Oh my gosh. The game was probably 50-60%. The old school horsemen, black guys from Louisiana and guys that were, and they knew their horses. And you know what it was? It was a contest. If this groom had 4 horses, he wanted his horses to look better than the next guy. It wasn't come in, clean the stalls, and get the hell out of here like it is today. It was the guys, the old black grooms, they knew their horses, they knew legs. They could tell a trainer that something was wrong and be right every time. You don't get that anymore. You don't get that here now. These guys, the last time a groom came to me and told me that there's a problem, there has to be blood squirting out of his leg for a groom to tell me there's a problem with a horse. But the old time guys knew their horses, and they knew when a muscle changed. I had a guy named Al Cantrell working for me, and he was, you know, he's probably dead 20, 30 years now. But Al used to say to me, "You see that muscle on that filly's behind? It's hurting her." And I'm looking at it, and I didn't think it was hurting her. And he's rubbing on that thing and putting liniment on it. And he comes back in the afternoon, he's rubbing on it and putting liniment on it. There was pride in your work back then. And that's, the old time horsemen really took pride in the job. But they're thinning out. They're thinning out. I'm not going to be here that long. You know, the older guys are good old time horsemen, but there's not a lot of them left.
No, in your lifetime, who was the greatest horse trainer?
In my lifetime, well, the greatest claiming trainer, hands down, was Frank Martin, because he looked at a horse. He would look at a horse. Our blacksmith would shoe a horse, and he'd look at that horse walking away, and he'd say, "Bullshit, get him back in the middle." And he'd take him in the middle, pull all 4 shoes off him, and change the angle of his feet and put the shoes back on himself. That's the kind of horseman Frank Martin was. The greatest. As far as trainer, big stage trainers, I've always been very, very much, and I didn't know the man, and I didn't work for him, but Wayne Lucas changed this game. He is, to me, the greatest trainer ever. He came to the track, and believe me, every barn was crappier looking than the next barn. He taught us to make barns look good. He taught us how to train horses. That man changed the entire face of racing in New York, California, everywhere. He made people proud to be at the racetrack. If you had a stable near Wayne Lucas, you better hang flowers and clean that place, because you're gonna get swallowed up by his barn. Wayne Lucas is a phenomenal trainer. Every year he came up with great horses, and he's a great, great horseman. And you know what? That reflects in the trainers that he's developed. Kieran McLaughlin, Dallas Stewart, Todd Pletcher. It goes on and on and on and on when you look at the guys who came from the Wayne Lucas school. And I think that tells the whole story of what a great trainer he was, because it's like when you say, is this a great sire? Well, a great sire is a sire who sires other sires. And like Into Mischief is becoming a great sire. You know, we've had so many great ones over the years. And Wayne Lucas produced a lot of great trainers, and that makes him a great trainer himself.
And you know, how important is the men and women that work on the backside with these horses every day?
Everything. They're everything. They're the ones that are hands-on. They're the ones that have to touch the legs, have to be front line and taking care of these horses and with them. A trainer is only as good as his horses and his help. And the help has to be spot on. And the help is really, really something. You know, the help is the biggest part of this game, and they're often forgotten, but they are, believe me, they're the backbone of this whole business.
You know, what's the horse that got you going in this business?
The horse that got me going in this business, when I went on my own, I left Frank Martin. We had 100 horses for Monmouth Park with 4 horses. And Johnny Campo, I never worked for him, but we were very good friends. He sent me one horse and he said, Contessa, let me tell you something.